depending on your perspective, whether it's sunshine or it's gloomy, we've had a fair amount of gloominess lately. It's a bad day. That's just that. But then the things that we have that happen to us, that we have to live through, or we have to experience, that defines our bad days. And there's been a fair amount for each and every one of us. So I did a little, this is kind of take a look at our bad days and to help us get through those. Do your days go as planned? The giggles and laughter and the shaking of heads, no, they don't. Even in the best days, best of days, they don't go as planned. You will be interrupted in life. Whatever your plan is, it's going to get interrupted somewhere. But bad days they require more prayer and more spiritual intensity. Because one person, one entity is always there to listen and to help you figure out what your next step is. And we learn lessons looking back at bad days. At work, they used to drill into us constantly. Reflect. Look back. What did you do? What should you have done different? I don't think they do that quite as much as they used to. But then for us, God directs us, walk with Him. Even in the valleys of the shadow of death. And we're going to get to that here in just a few more slides, because I think maybe that has a little bit different meaning than what we always just jump to with that. Do your days go as planned? Do you think Goliath? I mean, look at the height difference right there. Look at the size difference up there. Do you think Goliath really thought that this was anything of a big deal? This little boy with a little shot. His day goes planned. He never got to acknowledge his day didn't go as he planned, because it ended too quick. And King Saul, what was he to do with those Philistines? This little boy going up with a slingshot, and he's going to take out this guy that's been slaughtering my men. Then the Lord came with the shepherd David. When the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet the Philistine. He didn't run, he went to the battle. David put his hand in his bag, took out a stone and slung it, and struck Goliath in the forehead, and it sank into his forehead, and he fell face to the ground. Right there. Whatever Goliath had planned for that rest of that day just stopped. And he never knew it. And Saul, what he thought was going to be a complete disaster of a day, suddenly just took a shocking turn. There's only one reason why it went that way. It's because David had an army standing beside him that had more power than any of these men on that battlefield. The woman who touched Jesus, down here. Now, the rest of the story here, it was, of course, she'd had an affliction of bleeding for 12 years. Physicians and every other whatever of man could not solve her problem. She continued. But she had faith. And this picture is actually kind of very telling, because right here, all she wants to do is touch his garment. She doesn't need to talk to him. She doesn't need to do anything more. She just needs to touch his garment, not even his skin, just his garment. He had complete faith that she would be healed. Now, the rest of the story there is, it's not on this slide. Jesus knew when she touched him. Now, the other thing is, we talk about this on Wednesday night and even on Sunday morning to some extent. Everybody was racist at all times. He always knew what they were thinking, always knew what their hearts were, always knew what their intent was, always knew what to do, whether they were helping him or were loving him or against him and trying to trap him. He knew. When this woman touched him, he felt the energy. And she was healed instantly because of her faith. You will be interrupted in life. John the Baptist. John the Baptist, whether he knew or did not know about what was to happen that day, his life stopped the day that he was beheaded. Jesus lost a friend, a cousin, soldier of God, a disciple, and there's probably a long list of other ways to describe John's value and relationship to Jesus. Oh, cousin is one of them. And when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. Now, I left the image off of there. Go Google it. You won't like some of the images that come up. But they put forth the point of how life was interrupted. Not just John's, but Jesus's, all of the disciples. I mean, think about that. No matter what they were doing that day, here's John the Baptist, and now he's no more. He was there. He was a supporter. He was one of them teaching about Jesus. And now their lives have totally been changed and shaken. Their confidence has been shaken. Bad days require more prayer and spiritual intensity. Continuing at this on John the Baptist, because it applied in a couple ways. He went off to be in a desolate place, even by boat. Was he able to find that isolation? No. No matter where Jesus went, it was rare, unless it was nighttime, that he could be alone and find that alone time. Crowds found. Did he put them aside for time alone? So he'd go out on the hillside or wherever to pray, to meditate, talk to God, to put it in simplest terms. But he'd get that. What did he do? He served. He just lost John and all the things that John meant to him, because John's the one that baptized him. So there's a special relationship there. He just lost him. What would you have done? Would you have turned around and dealt with a crowd of people that were wanting to come to be around you, to talk to you? Or you kind of said, not today. Let's pick this up tomorrow morning. Just not that. Jesus didn't do that. A bad day. Life completely interrupted of what the concept of where things were served. Sorry, got ahead of myself. He served. Now, we could spend an hour, at least, going through scriptures, just the gospel. Just keep it to just the gospels. of all the examples of how he served. But to put it all down to a simple term of description, he served because he loved. And he put himself aside because he loved. That's the bottom line. Bad day or not, he loved people. Present time and future. Because he was the plan. I didn't put all the animation on this to bring in bits and pieces because I thought, let's just talk about this. Learn lessons looking back at bad days. History is important. Whether some people read the Bible a history book, it's still important. They treat it as a living book, still important. Our life, the history, it's important because we can learn from that. Did you walk up to someone and you had the most awkward conversation because you fumbled over all your words, and you go away thinking, I messed that conversation up totally, wasn't what my point was, and embarrassed myself in the process? Hopefully they'll continue to talk to me. But that's the reflection, that's looking back, that's learning from a spiritual perspective. I dare say none of us are good. None of us are perfect at walking up to a complete stranger and talking to them about the Bible and God and what it takes to be saved. Well, that is probably a fair statement. Can we have those conversations? Sure. Can we learn from what we fumbled over ourselves trying to express words? Yes. And that's kind of the point. And even in Bible class, we put forth ideas and then we learn something else because someone brings in another piece of information. It's like, I never realized that. I never thought about that. Said all that, let's jump back to the Old Testament for just a moment. What did the Israelites ever figure out in the Old Testament? They never got it. Whether they were on their own, or they were given kings, or they were put in captivity and then released, and then, oh, wait a minute, we're down to Jesus, because they've done that for centuries, and they never figured it out. God was patient with them and continued to try to teach them, but they never learned from what they had been through. We get down to Jesus. Did look back? Well, not the Pharisees and the Sadducees and those in power. Now, what we're not in the Bible is the fact that the mass of people, which is what all the Pharisees and Sadducees and so forth are all afraid of, because they were going to lose their power. The mass of people did understand Jesus. They did believe in Jesus because that's why all the crowds were there. Now, granted, there were some of them there just because of, he's doing healings and he's doing miracles, and I want to see that. And of course, there's some people like that. But there were so many. It was such a crowd all the time. You also kind of have to believe that they were there because they believed in it. And they were trying to learn, and they were curious. I mean, put that all together. It's not just one thing. How could we handle situations differently? The scripture I put over there on Philippians, not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. Well, that's a big piece of us dealing with bad days. Being content with it is, and looking for the how can we do better? What can we do? What can we change? How do we deal with it? I know how to be brought low, and I know how to in any and every circumstance, stance. I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Because he gives us that confidence. He gives us that knowing what the reward is going to be to push through, persevere, be persistent, continue to look for, okay, just got to deal with this, got to get through the day. Now on the bottom, probably not the guy you would have thought that I put a quote up for. But he said, Einstein said, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is a sign of insanity. Whether it's your job, it's life, or it's your church and your spiritual. If you keep doing the same things over and over the same way, how do you think it's going to change? It's going to turn out the same. So, God expects you to walk with him even in the valleys of the shadow of the death. Psalms 23. And I kind of thought that picture was kind of appropriate of the vulture standing there at the side in a dark and gloomy valley. And by the way, that's a desert valley in there that's got nothing else there. And sometimes that's what we're doing. We're walking through a valley of the shadow of death. Well, it may seem death because our world has fallen apart and there doesn't seem to be anyone there to help us, comfort us. Now, for us, probably means we need to let somebody know and talk to somebody, just for somebody to listen. And many times our most important job is not talking, it's listening. Because someone's troubled, someone's bothered. Jesus told a lot of parables. He made a lot of statements. But how much of the time did he spend listening to? He spent a lot of time listening to people. So I walked through the valley of the shadow of death. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And I should have underlined the very last line as well. And I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That's the hope. That's what we're persevering for. That's what we're working for. And all stumbling we do between now and then, we're still having, when those bad days, we're still needing to put one foot in front of another, physically and spiritually, because that's where it's at, is with God and him helping us. And of course, with that said, this is, to me, the obvious image to put up there. We're really not alone. We make ourselves alone. He's always there. And as this illustration goes, there's other images that show two sets of footsteps and it goes to one. And that's not us being alone. That's a single set of footsteps where he's carrying us. And if you look at those, if you'll notice the impression right here, that's deep. He's carrying. He's carrying us, even though we don't realize it. It's because we need to get past ourselves and realize he is there to help us every step of the way. We're not alone. Many times we feel that way, but we do that to ourselves. Then it brings me on to Ecclesiastes. And I'm not going to read all this. But there's a time for everything. I actually have this clipped, about 2-inch by 3-inch by 1-inch little print on my desk. I'm going to tell you something. I have this right down here. time for silence and there's a time to speak. And I have that one highlighted because at work, I have to hit the mute button a lot because being a peer and being a manager, a lot of times I really want to speak, but I'll glance at that, hit the mute button so I don't accidentally mumble something because it's like, yeah, I get it. I get it. Come on, let's get to the end of the story here so I can then make my comments. Because so many times we want to jump in and speak, but there's another factor that we need to put in there, and that's the respect for the other person. And what I'm getting at is when that person in our family right here in this room is having a bad day, I need to hit my mute button. Keep our comments to ourselves and let them talk. Because they've got something that's weighing heavy on them. May not be a problem to us, but our helping them is a time to speak, and a time to listen. And we need to put ourselves second, because it's not just, I should have put a little triangle over here to the side, because it's not you and that person having that conversation. God's right there with it, if you let him in the conversation. And the bottom line is, all of this said and done, Solomon's saying, be patient. Everything has a time. Now, this one I got to think about before, and so I don't get my words all messed up on this one. But Solomon already told us, again, I saw that under the sun, the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happen to them all. I'd read this a few times because I pulled it and I had a devotional that talked all about it, and I had to go back and reread it a few times to get it. But to break it down, the battle's not always won by the strong. Back up a few slides. Was Goliath stronger than David? Oh my, yes. Physically. But the strong didn't win that battle. Riches to the intelligent. Are those that are the smartest necessarily the richest? Well, they have money. What little bit I know about Elon Musk, he's a workaholic. Of course, we all know he's rich. He's a workaholic, but he doesn't have what we would consider a family life. Yeah, he's divorced and has kids, but that's not where he puts his effort. He puts it in himself and his business. Now he's into much more things. I'm not even going to go there because I don't know that much about him. I've read very little about him, but he's kind of a simple example. Those in that echelon of people, of types of people, they have all kinds of riches. Doesn't make them the smartest about how they do things. And the next one, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happens to all. So when you get rid of those things, bad days are going to befall everyone. Nobody's excluded. We're not guaranteed to have all happy days. There's another slide I thought about, but you can, as you put these thoughts together, in the last week, I have seen like 5 devotions and 3 different Facebook things that could have all easily been posted right in here to continue right down this thing. I couldn't remember if I put this one in there or not. But my point on the bad days is really that we're all going to have them to some degree or not. What's a bad day for you may not really be a big deal or a bad day to another person, but it's big to you. And that's what's important. I mean, but don't forget, not alone. But you've got to lean on him. You've got to ask him. You've got to talk to him. You got to pray to him. He isn't going to sit down. He's going to sit down across the chair beside you and sit there and talk to you and tell you as such as we would discuss. But if you're reading your Bible and you're studying, even if it's once in a while, those scriptures are going to come out to help you understand how do you deal with this. Or maybe it's something you read 3 years ago and suddenly maybe it clicks and it finally makes sense. But just some thoughts. We all have bad days, want to have bad days, but just some things to keep in mind about, Goliath kind of had a pretty bad day. And King Saul thought he was about to have a horrible day. Didn't turn out that way. Go down through some of the others. John the Baptist. Wasn't a good day for him or anybody else around him that knew him. Even Jesus wanted alone to pray and to meditate. But he didn't. He put love for everyone else first and put himself second. Or, as what we read in this morning's Bible class about when you go in and there's a party you've invited to, don't set up front, set at the last position. Put others first. So just some thoughts. Bad days are going to happen. Bad days are going to continue to come no matter what. And so just some things for us to think about.